political donors are a class, and it's very, very common for them to butter their bread on different sides.
Absolutely, yes. You can see that all over the place.
So that is a very, very common practice. It doesn't really tell you much about any politician. That percentage would be normally a bit lower, maybe, but not a lot, okay? So they're using the fact that most people would know what the donating pattern is. They would think everybody who gives to Republicans would never give to Democrats and vice versa. That is amongst the donor class. That is absolutely not true.
Instead of conflict and aggression, here's governance built on grace. Welcome to Gracearchy with Jim Babka.
You know, Jim and I like to say that you are smarter if you listen to this show. And today we're going to remind you of how that works and why. You know, we've been following a candidate, actually, and we're going to discuss Tom Massie again, as we've done before. But Jim wants to take some time with you to re-explain the two reasons why campaign finance laws exist. You've already heard us talk about this, but it's important to bring this back into the context of the conversation because, as you know, things can go crazy these days. In an episode that we will link below, Jim predicted that Thomas Massie was going to be demonized by this massive super PAC funded kind of propaganda campaign that tends to go after people like Tom Massie. We'll explain more about him. He's a former Tea Party member, if you remember back that far. And now the Tea Party loathes him, and it's really just crazy. So let's get this ball rolling here. Jim, come on aboard, and let's start encouraging people to be smarter than they are right now.
Well, it is important that it's important to remind you that we have pointed something out on this show before, because when we do, everything that we kind of do here is designed to kind of give you tools to kind of analyze and look at the world and be able to make sense of things that are going on, kind of overcome kind of a mob mentality that exists out there. And propaganda is definitely designed to kind of tweak a mob mentality, and it's inundating. It just keeps coming at you in a way that it makes it harder and harder to see the truth. It's like throwing mud on your windshield, right? Yeah. And so we're kind of the windshield wipers. We're kind of pushing it away. We're not going to make the picture completely clear because the mud's going to keep coming. But you'll be able to go, oh, okay, I understand what's happening now. Like, I get it. I can see through the glass. It might be dark, but I can see through the glass. I have a sense of what's coming at me, why it's happening. And
it's hard to push back, against the popularity machine, because something gets popular and then it gets picked up and profligated automatically in ways that don't really serve us poor human beings here who are just trying to sort it all through. So like, share, do whatever you can with this episode to help balance that equation. And here we go.
So we had talked about Thomas Massie in episode 146, which you already indicated we're going to link below. That was titled The Self-Hating Tea Party versus Tom Massie. The stuff we also followed up in Instant Grace 45, attacks on Tom Massie and Rand Paul have already begun. Yep. So it's kind of targeted at these two men who have stood up and not just simply gone MAGA, which is we now know that what MAGA means is cult of Trump. It doesn't. There's a movement of people that believe in something called America First. There's other people who can classify themselves as conservatives who were fans and were part of the MAGA movement. But one by one, they've been kind of read out. If they've stuck to their conservatism or they stuck to a kind of a true American nationalist approach, either one of those things, they've been kind of read out, as have libertarians, who, by the way, have gotten up and run out of the room. They shouldn't have been in the first place. I just want to be clear.
Right.
They should not have been in that room in the first place. This was all knowable in advance to some degree. Now, I will even admit, I hoped against hope that I would be wrong about some of the things that were going to happen. I didn't want the worst to happen, but a lot of it has. Tom Massie is a recognizable face and name now because he has stood up. And since we did that show, the Epstein files have been released, which he plays a huge role in. So the context I want to set here is that the reason for those shows is that 3 GOP mega donors, one of whom is almost a household name now themselves, have funded a super PAC. And they initially funded it all the way back in the summer with more than $2 million. That number has now grown north of 8, and we expect that number to top 18 before it's done. That's my expectation. That's how much money they're going to spend in the state of Kentucky to attempt to defeat one representative, not a senator, a solitary representative. And Donald Trump is playing an active role in this effort. He has been putting out a lot of social media posts about Tom Massie. He even called him on the phone and told him he was going to bury him.
Why is he such a threat to the Trump we have to come up with a name for this, but to the Trump cult,
to the MAGA. So
yeah.
the balance in the House is sometimes been down as low as one vote.
Yep.
And it's just been teetering on barely able to hold a majority, which Massie is a part of. And so they need Massie's vote. They need everybody's vote. They can't, when they whip the votes, they can't afford to lose a single vote. And the majority of the Democratic Party has some degree, you could place this on a continuum, of Trump derangement syndrome. And what I mean by that is they are prone to say no because Trump said so.
Right, right.
They both sides have done some flipping around on the issues that they believe in based on whatever Trump's saying. So if Trump says it, it's automatically wrong, even if I believed in it yesterday. If Trump says it, it's automatically right, even if I believe the opposite yesterday.
And I'm guessing Massie has a spine and knows
Massie
the
is
difference.
consistent.
Yep.
So one of the points he wants to make very, very clear to people is that he has voted with Donald Trump 91% of the time, 92% of the time, somewhere in that name. And the remaining balance, the small single-digit percentage that remains, has to do with just a handful of issues. He doesn't believe in increasing spending. So when the real trouble, recent trouble, where the challenge got put into place, we're going to unseat you, we're going to primary you and attempt to knock you out of your seat in Kentucky. That began with a continuing resolution to continue spending the same amount of money that the Biden budget had. Identical. They weren't looking to spend less. They were looking to spend the Biden budget. They wanted to change some things and extend the debt ceiling and do some other stuff, but they didn't want the actual spending to decrease. And Massie saw this, this is early in Trump's term. There's momentum. He saw this as a missed opportunity, and he saw this as a repudiation of campaign promises. Donald Trump had a tax cut he wanted to get through and some other stuff he was planning for a couple months down the road. He wanted a clean continuing resolution. Massie said, I won't support it. Trump goes into opposition. But the thing that's really sticking in their craw is the Epstein stuff and the fact that Massie will not support Israeli government, Likud party foreign policy. Those are the two things that are really sticking in their craw the most. And we don't have to recount it here. It's been recounted in 1,000 other places. Obviously, he's moved a mountain. So in moving this mountain, he got a discharge petition done, and it's not easy. Discharge petitions are very difficult to get. You've got to get a majority of representatives to sign on to something the leadership didn't want to have move forward. Otherwise, they would have moved it. And it's very clear they don't want that to happen. So there were all the Democrats plus 4 Republicans who acted. One of those Republicans is no longer in the House. That's Marjorie Taylor Greene. And the other has chosen to stick around despite the fact that he's being primaried. And that's Tom Massie. And they don't appreciate these acts. These are independent acts that they feel get in the way of the MAGA, which just means Trump cult agenda, which is whatever he says it is today. It literally is, he is the word of God in these situations. So that's what's offended them.
Okay,
all right, so
with that as the setup here, we have some things to present to people, and because some of you are audio and some of you are watching this, we're going to read some of this stuff. But give us the setup for Ken Blackwell and how that ties together here.
Okay, so this is the latest, and I want to say...
As of today.
It is the latest, and I just want to say this will not be the last. There is a thing in normal campaigning called the October Surprise. What it means is in the last month or so of the campaign, which that clock will start in late April. The primary is on May 19th. There is usually something that will drop 2, 3, 4 weeks out that is really sensational. Sometimes it'll drop days before the election. The hope is that what will happen with this thing is that the candidate at whom it's aimed cannot get out from under it. It's a rock that's so big it crushes them. They've already begun tipping their hand as to what they're going to do. They've tried to suggest that Paul and Massie might be on the take from various Venezuelan sources and stuff. We've talked about that in the instant grace. This one now is going to focus on where he's getting his money, which is deeply ironic because there's money coming from outside the state from Paul Singer, John Paulson, and Miriam Adelson, Those are the three that are involved in the super PAC. Mary Madelson's practically become a household name. She's the largest donor to all Trump campaign activities. She's very much part of this pro-Israel bloc that funds a lot of that type of thinking, although far from the majority of it. I mean, there's a lot of people funding that, but she's one of the bigger funders in that arena. These are the three people leading the targeting of a PAC. It's a super PAC. I think it's called MAGA Kentucky, or Kentucky MAGA, but they're targeting him. So
with $18 million worth of anti.
Yeah, eventually I think that's where it's going to be. So here we are kind of in the middle of that campaign right now. This is March. So we've still got a more than a month to go before we're likely to see whatever the surprise is going to be. It will be much more evil sounding, sinister sounding when that particular thing emerges. But this is pretty solid. This is a real attack from a real person who is a political figure, who is known very well in the neighboring state of Ohio. Ken Blackwell is highest level of office he achieved was Secretary of State in Ohio. And he was the last Republican nominee to lose running for governor here. We've had a string of Republican administrations this entire century. There's been one term that had a Democrat, and they beat Ken Blackwell. This is very much, Ohio is very much like the National Party in a lot of ways. It's a your turn party. Mm-hmm. So they choose the person is next up, and they rearrange and push everybody to the other offices and make them wait their turn. And he went to Secretary of State because he wanted to be governor. He went to Secretary of State. That was his prize. And then he given his turn to follow the governor, Taft, and become our governor. So that's the highest level he achieves, is to be Secretary of State here. But he's still, a known commodity within the state. And it's significant that the first thing that we covered in the Instant Grace episode we've referenced below was kind of an internet rumor. But this isn't an internet rumor. This is a well-known political figure who's connected to the establishment. He subsequently ran to be chair of the Republican National Committee. He lost to Michael Steele in that instance. So this is a guy who is like kind of a very known commodity who is putting his personal reputation on the line in making these charges and accusations against Tom Massie. So I would like to go through it, share what these charges are, and I may jump in as you're reading it.
Yeah, feel free.
Okay.
For those who are watching, we've got 4 screens of this, and we did that so that it would be clear where the breaks are. So just holler anytime, Jim. Here we go.
I'm going to be doing it pretty quick. So
yeah, you will be. You will be. So here's Ken Blackwell, breaking news. And I'm quoting. So when you're hearing me, I'm quoting right now. Thomas Massie, of course, spelled wrong.
Yep.
Thomas Massie cashes squad checks from the far left.
Okay, stop. Squad is the most important word in that sentence. So they are going to create a guilt by association, which is a logical fallacy. They're going to suggest that because he's receiving money from certain people, ergo he must be like those people. The evidence is exactly the opposite, but you need to point to the squad. The squad is just a handful of people. They will get mentioned in this message, but it's a handful of very progressive people that are considered almost foreigners. Like maybe they don't even belong in Congress. That's kind of the far right position. So that's a trigger word for them. They're using squad there on purpose. Go on.
Yeah, gotcha. Quote, fresh campaign finance filings are raising serious questions about the political brand that Kentucky Congressman Thomas Massie has carefully cultivated for years. Massie often presents himself as a libertarian purist and a thorn in the side of the Republican establishment. He's built a reputation among some conservatives as a principled outsider who refuses to play the usual Washington games. But the newest filings with the Federal Election Commission tell a more complicated story about who is actually helping fund his political operation. Okay, there's going to be a little screen break here, but you'll get through it, so just bear with us. Here we go again. Quote, according to the latest disclosures, multiple maximum donations of $7,000 flowed into Massie's 2025-2026 campaign account from members of the, am I going to say this right, Marouk family?
Yep. It's spelled M-H-R-O-U-G if anybody wants to look it up, or Q. I think it might be
U-Q, yeah, M-A-H-R-O-U-Q, Marouk family. Quote, that fact alone would not necessarily be remarkable in Washington, where political donations come from many different sources. What has caught the attention of observers is the broader pattern surrounding those same donors. The Baruch family has a long track record of contributing money to some of the most prominent figures on the progressive left. Donation records show their money previously going to politicians such as Ilhan Omar, Cori Bush, Ro Khanna, and Keith Ellison.
Okay,
Those
stop. Ilhan Omar, Cori Bush, those are part of that group in the House that's called the Squad.
Yeah, the progressive left.
Okay, they're Democratic Socialists, even, if you wanted to suggest that.
Sure, proudly. I mean, Omar is definitely a socialist.
Ro Khanna is getting thrown in this mix, even though he's not part of that group because he's the other person on the name of the Massie discharge petition. It was Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie who brought the Epstein records, to the public. So he's being included in this. Keith Ellison is no longer in federal office. He is back in his state as the Minnesota as the Attorney General, but he has reemerged in headlines of late because of what happened with the Minneapolis-St. Paul ICE things. These names, though, are picked for a very specific reason. He could have put more names, but they picked these names for a reason. They are trying to basically paint a pattern here. This, again, is guilt by association. Go ahead and keep going.
Okay, quote, those names are not exactly associated with the conservative movement, yet members of that same donor network are now writing maximum checks to a Republican congressman who markets himself as a champion of conservative independence.
Okay, stop. There's weasel words in here.
Are there ever?
You say yet members of the same donor network. This went from the Baruch family. And by the way, this post is accompanied by a very fuzzy picture of Baruch donations on a single page. They put them down on a page, and then they gave you this fuzzy picture of it. So this is not a donor network they're talking about. They literally are talking about one family.
They're talking about one family and then sliding the donor network in behind it.
There you go.
Like
they're going to elaborate and try to give you the belief that there is a network here. But I just want to say, that claim hasn't been made yet. But there's words in here that are designed to sound like they're being moderate. These names are not exactly associated with the conservative movement. Well, no, they're not. They're not. People who are very much on the opposite side. Okay, keep going.
Okay, quote, the pattern doesn't stop there. Federal Election Commission records show that a striking share of Massie's financial support comes from individuals who also donate heavily to Democrats. Roughly 79% of Massie's itemized donors have also contributed to Democratic candidates or to Act Blue, the fundraising platform used widely by the Democratic Party.
Okay, so let me just say this. What that statement means is at some point in the history of any one of these donors, at any one point, now these political donors are a class, and it's very, very common for them to butter their bread on different sides.
Absolutely, yes. You can see that all over the place.
So that is a very, very common practice. It doesn't really tell you much about any politician. That percentage would be normally a bit lower, maybe, but not a lot, okay? So they're using the fact that most people wouldn't know what the donating pattern is. They would think everybody who gives to Republicans would never give to Democrats and vice versa. That is amongst the donor class. That is absolutely not true for a host of reasons we don't have time to get into today. I just want you to realize that this is taking advantage of something that you shouldn't have any reason to have to know about, and then trying to paint it in a way that would seem counterintuitive. It's not.
You're smarter now for knowing this.
Right. Thank you. And the other thing is that Act Blue is a fundraising platform, and it's very widely used on the blue side of the ledger. Very, very widely used. So to say that someone showed up at an Act Blue might mean that they actually gave on an issue that they cared about. Maybe, and I just want to throw this out here because I imagine that there's some people in the audience who could actually imagine for themselves. They actually have more of a mind than a cult member would have. And they could imagine for themselves the ability to say, oh, wait, I disagree with the Republican Party on this, or I disagree with the Democratic Party on that, even if by and large they are Republican and Democrat people, right? They would be able to say, oh, I can see one exception. And that it could be a Republican now who donates on an Act Blue issue, right? It's using that fundraising platform. So
not in the fundraising class, but I've had that personal dilemma over abortion because I'm was back in the day a pro-choice Republican. And that just didn't fit in the party.
I think everybody's got some issue like this. I suspect that the overwhelming number, more than 79% of Republicans, more than 79% of Democrats, have an issue where they don't really line up with their party. They agree more on something else. This is basically pretending that there's something. This is like Mad Men stuff, right? Mad Men, the TV series.
Yes, it is.
This is where you take the obvious part of the process, right? Oh, our cigarettes are toasted. right?
Yep.
And this is a process everybody's doing, but you highlight one feature of it, make it sound like you're doing something everybody else isn't doing. And they got to scramble and go, well, we do that too. Like this is marketing. This is advertising. This is con almost, right? It's pretending that this is substantial information that isn't really all that substantial. Okay.
Okay.
Keep going.
Quote, altogether, those crossover contributions, I like that word, crossover contributions add up to nearly $2 million flowing into Massie's campaign from donors who are simultaneously supporting the political opposition.
But see, they're not supporting Massie's opponents. They're supporting Massie.
They're
right?
supporting Massie.
The political opposition is Republican interests, right? So as we just explained why this is not that big a deal, but there's one more thing to explain. They're complaining about the $2 million he raised. They already had raised $2 million in July of 2025. So this is $2 million versus money that they raised a long time ago. Early money is like yeast. They were already ahead, way far. And they are already way past that point now. I don't have an exact figure for you. I'm going to ballpark that it's north of 5 at this point that they've raised and spent on ads, raised and spent on various types of advertising they're going to do up through this point, roughly in March. So, and we expect that number to go, as I told you before, closer to 18 million. I could be wrong. It might be less. But the idea that they're upset about is 2 million when they're spending all this other money against them, that's kind of funny.
Yeah. It's and y'all are smarter now because you know. Okay, quote, that financial backdrop stands in contrast to Massie's public political positioning. He's been a vocal critic of foreign aid spending, including aid to Israel. He's also repeatedly clashed with the agenda of President Donald Trump, setting himself apart from many Republicans who have embraced the America First movement. Those policy disputes have already made Massie a controversial figure inside the Republican coalition. Okay, so I got to stop. Time out here, because America First is not the same as MAGA, the cult of Trump.
No, that doesn't mean they're not going to keep borrowing on a bunch of phrases that explain or that they hope to co-opt and control. I mean, politicians do this stuff all the time.
Right. Okay, continuing. Quote, another notable point in the fundraising picture is Massie's lack of support for AIPAC. Now, if I get that, that's
AIPAC.
Trump AIPAC. It doesn't say Trump AIPAC, but we can say that. AIPAC stands for the American Israeli Political Action Committee. Do I have that right?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll do that again. Quote, another notable point in the fundraising picture is Massie's lack of support from AIPAC, aligned donors, a major force in pro-Israel political funding.
Time out.
Yes.
Time out. So what has just been said by Ken Blackwell, the quiet part's been said out loud, is that if you are not endorsed by AIPAC, you are not America First.
Yeah.
This is an organization that lobbies on behalf of another state, another nation. And if you are not part of that, you're not part of our movement. Now, I want to go. I want to be
Israel
clear.
Lobby writ large again, isn't it?
I want to be clear about this here. Every time you bring this issue up, it's fraught with peril because to discuss what's going on there, you get labeled an anti-Semite for disagreeing. There is no evidence whatsoever that Tom Massie's an anti-Semite. Anti-Semitism is disgusting and wrong. That has to do with blood guilt or libel against a people because of their nationality or heritage. It's a collectivist means of thinking. It's something I abhor and disagree with, okay? But if you want to criticize a state, which is completely legitimate, I criticize all states for their very existence and what they represent. I criticize our state here at home, which puts out this government that is constantly doing things it shouldn't be doing. It's my job to do that practically. And so I don't think it's the least bit illegitimate to question another state and what they're doing in a particular region of the world, nor do I believe it is wrong to criticize whether or not we should be involved and what the levels of that involvement should be.
Well,
okay.
Sure.
Okay, but to suggest that, because you merely raise these questions or you don't vote the way we want you to vote, you don't have the support of this PAC, you're not now one of the Republicans. You're not part of the America First movement. I don't know how many people in 2024, when voting for Donald Trump, would have thought, one of the boxes I have to check along with wanting my taxes to go down, believing that immigration's an issue, and go through the issues on their list, right? One of the issues they believed very solidly at the time was that war was wrong, and Donald Trump repeatedly promised he wasn't going to give war. He was going to be the opposite. Stephen Miller said that if you vote for Kamala, you're voting for an Iran war. Okay, so they were trying to distance themselves from all that stuff. Nobody had on their checklist, nobody had it on their card beforehand, if they were part of this group, that they needed to be AIPAC aligned. The fact that it's being pointed out here is, to me, very, very telling.
This
to you by the Zero Aggression Project. The Zap newsletter subscribers get alerts when each episode is released. The Zap website is also the pathway by which you can contact us by email and support the show. This program operates thanks to tax-deductible Zap contributions, and we appreciate your support. So, zap the state, and have a nice day. As we record this, we're sitting in the second week of the bombing of Iran?
Second. Yes, I think it's
week.
second. Yeah. Okay.
A war that nobody was given the opportunity to vote for, that Trump initiated on his own recognizance and is completely responsible for. And it has nothing to do with... And yet here's Ken Blackwell calling out Massie for
not being supported by AIPAC.
Not being supportive. Okay, let's continue. While many members of Congress from both parties received support from that network, the AIPAC network, Massie has largely skipped that source of funding.
Okay, so I want to point out now that many members of Congress from both parties. So
Yes.
would that not represent, Mr. Blackwell, people taking money from the opposition or a donor who gives to the opposition? Like this whole idea of, like earlier, you were just told this is kind of a sin, right? He's getting all this money from people who are in the political opposition. But now we have a coalition organization, a super PAC that gives money to both parties. And this is actually a virtue now. So what was a sin just a couple paragraphs ago is now a virtue. Keep going.
Quote, taken together, the financial records reveal a campaign sustained in part by donors who are also major supporters of the very progressive politicians many conservatives strongly oppose. For critics, that raises a question about whether Massie's reputation as an independent conservative rebel fully matches the coalition of donors helping fund his political efforts.
Okay, that sentence is a jumble.
Oh,
that
my
sentence
gosh.
is full of big words and written in a way that is almost, the meaning of it is almost undetectable, especially given everything that we've just read. Okay.
Yep.
There's not a question being raised. He's raised. It's not like some third party, like, oh, there's this question being raised and I'm just an objective reporter. No, he's raising the question. This is whether Massie is, I don't know what an independent conservative rebel is. Like those three things I don't know how those all fit together. Right. And then fully matches the coalition of donors helping fund his political effort. Well, if they're giving money to him, doesn't that mean that they agree with him? Isn't that like kind of the signal? How many things do you donate to that you overtly disagree with, that are contrary or opposite your values? This sentence is nonsense garbage, right? It's Sonic Wonder Bread being presented as if it's actually a statement of some kind of like that has kind of this
factual
air of factual distance from the whole thing. No, it's not. You called in to question him, and we know you did it, despite the fact that you wrote this in passive voice.
Yep.
Please keep going.
Quote, supporters of Massie may argue that accepting donations from a wide range of people reflects broad appeal or ideological independence.
I would be one of those people.
Yes. Critics see something different. Clearly, quote, they point to a Republican congressman whose war chest is strengthened by donors who've also helped finance figures like Omar, Bush, Kahana, and Ellison while contributing through Act Blue to Democratic campaigns across the country.
Okay, so time out. Yes, there was a senator not too long ago who was a Democrat who decided not to keep running because his state has turned solidly red, Trump red, and that is Senator Manchin. And there were a lot of Republicans who donated to Senator Manchin. That's happened, okay? The idea that you would find somebody giving to an Act Blue Democratic campaign, we've already covered like what that means. So I want to just break this sentence down too. They say he's got a war chest. He doesn't really. In fact, they have actually increased his fundraising by virtue of the fact they've attacked him. And it's not working. It's not working. Let me give you just a little tiny bit of data on this. Here's some of the comments that are being pulled up in response to this post. Power to him if he can attract donors from the opposite side. He's proven his vote can't be bought. You realize that this is how it should be, right? Someone else asks. Has everyone lost the plot? We as Americans should be rooting for someone who can pull support from both sides of the aisle, someone we can all get behind. You know, united. This is someone else. If the left wants to join the most steadfast conservative libertarian in Congress, then great. The anti-war cause unites across political lines, and that's the cause that they're not pointing out. This is an anti-war guy, and that's part of why he's getting the support. This is an anti-pedophile guy. And that is why he's getting support. This is a guy who says, you promised you were going to do something, reduce government spending. And this is why he gets support. He votes with Donald Trump the rest of the time, but when it comes to pedos, big spending, and foreign wars, he refuses to go along. He sticks to the positions that were held when people were voting, all the way back in them ancient of days, 2024.
So he has principles, basically. He says he's going to do something and he does it.
Yeah.
Well, that's novel.
And these other two of these comments I just read, saying that pulling support from both sides of the aisle and that the war issue unites people across political lines. I just want to point out it's evidence that this is backfiring, because in the primary, it's possible for people to go in and request a Democratic ballot. It's possible for independents to go in and request a Republican ballot. They can go in and choose because they know that in their district, this is the race. This is the one that matters. They can go in and they can help tilt the Republican scales. This is an invitation to those people that this race matters so much that even Donald Trump is doing everything he can to stop it. Now, we know Trump derangement syndrome is a real thing. I think it runs on a continuum, right? But we know there's a lot of people who are like, wait a minute, Trump wants this guy out? That's enough reason for me to make a one-time lifetime exception and be a Democrat who walks over and requests a Republican ballot. One more thing about this. In the comments from this post, we're going to finish reading it in a second, but in the comments for this post, I think the ratio is probably 100-1 running against Blackwell. This is such a bad strategy on their part to pursue. I'm almost grateful they did it. Me personally, I'm not speaking for the Zero Aggression Project, which sponsors this show. I'm not speaking for any of our donors or supporters, but I like Tom Massie. If I were there, I'd vote for Tom Massie. I would be working on the ground for his campaign if I lived in that district of Kentucky. And I'm looking at this and saying, this is backfiring here. They're getting absolutely racial. In fact, somebody even put up a post that says, you're getting leveled in the comments here. And they have this meme or this GIF that they attached to it that said that didn't go as planned. Yeah. I mean, this thing is getting savaged, and deservedly so. I'll let you go ahead and finish reading this.
Okay, last paragraph, quote, campaign finance reports often reveal political realities that campaign speeches do not. In this case, the filings show that a significant portion of the money supporting Thomas Massie's reelection effort comes from individuals who regularly support Democrats as well. Ringing the bell, ringing the bell, ringing the bell. Right? Hit me over the head one more time, please, Ken. And we're done with you now.
All right, so now we're done with Ken. But I just want to say there's some other things that are to be understood that are not on the printed page here, not on the screen. And that is that there's no references. They have a grainy photo of Maruk donations, but most of this is unsourced, unsubstantiated, unproven. It should be thrown away as garbage under normal circumstances because so little is actually referenced and tied to facts.
And for I didn't say this, but for those of you who didn't see it, this is a Facebook post. So this is social media. This is
we're going to put
social, but it is Facebook.
We're going to put that link down, and so you can see it for yourself too, and you can see all the comments. You can see that I write about the comments. It's also obvious it's ghostwritten right from the very first misspelling.
Oh, sure. Yep.
And so this is handed and put out on his page. It was very irresponsible of him to participate about this, but he said sure. He said sure to somebody. This is ghost written, and where did it come from? This is part of the normal coordinated attack. This very much echoes the types of things that
I
Trump
didn't even get
saying.
To ask my question, man. I was going to ask you who was behind this.
We don't know
not
for
Ken
sure.
Blackwell.
No, it's not Clem, but that's the thing that we do know for sure. Ken Blackwell didn't write this. Okay, no. I'd be willing to bet that, but he got this material from somebody and then agreed to republish it. And there's a well-funded campaign out there. And of course, they're going to be using some of their efforts in social media. And those types of spendings are going to be harder for us to see in real time than ad buys. Ad buys, you can go look and see what all the TV stations,
you
radio
can
stations.
actually see the.
And that's all been announced. That's all announced. That's all put out there. There's an ad agency, there's an ad industry group that actually keeps track of that.
But social media posts?
Yeah. Yeah, and they can drop this stuff, and the more controversial it is, the better. Like, it's actually going to do better because it got so many comments. That's the one bad side to getting ratioed, is that this gets more promotion, but this propaganda that keeps pounding keeps coming. By the way, Blackwell, when he was running for governor, he had a couple of issues that involved campaign finance accusations against him. And one of them was that church groups, C3s, illegally campaigned on his behalf and did engage in activities to help advance his electoral effort. He's always historically been very connected to the religious right. That was part of what came his direction. Now, can I tell you something like kind of shocking?
Well, just keep in mind that you're telling all the rest of the people too. So
I don't care. Like when people come along with these kinds of charges, said, well, he used church groups. I don't care. And they say, well, he gets donors from this location. I don't care. Or look how much money he's raised. I don't care. Or did you know so-and-so is actually the person that gave him this money? I really don't care. Okay. And I have been completely consistent about this. Leaving aside all the history I could go through on my relationship and role in the Citizens United case, on my role in taking a case all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court on this, which we covered in episode 42, Trump and the Rancid Truth About Campaign Finance Laws. We laid out the first 29 minutes of that episode. We laid out some general principles about campaign finance laws. And we said if you understood these principles, you wouldn't even understand just the Trump story, which I'm going to get to in just a moment, that we were dealing with at that time. You would understand all campaign finance stories. 29 minutes of just laying out campaign finance principles. It's worth going back and watching that. Where you see words like candidate investigated for campaign violations, you would know what it was they were referring to and how corrupt and backwards that system all is. We're going to get to that in just a second too. You would know more than even the reporters in those cases. In other words, if you listen to the first 29 minutes of Trump and the Rancid Truth About Campaign Finance Laws, episode 42, you would know more than most reporters covering the story knows. 29 minutes and you'd already be a better expert.
There we go.
You would know more. Okay?
Smarter by engaging with Gracearchy. I just want to drop that in there just for new listeners.
But Trump's attorneys may not have even fully understood at the time. You've heard how he was convicted of 34 felonies.
Oh, right. Yeah. Of
It's
course,
not
they
true.
don't matter.
It's not true. And the key to making that happen was campaign finance laws. They needed campaign finance laws to take a state thing that had already run past the statutes of limitations and was not a felony to convert it so that it's lived past the statute of limitations and became a federal felony. They had to bring this federal campaign finance charge and mix it in. And they had to argue that the reason that he was buying off or got a story moved or suppressed was that he was doing it for political campaign purposes, that by withholding information from you, he was actually giving you information or something. It was all kind of very fuzzy, but the point was it was campaign finance laws. We followed that episode up with a second episode. And then we also did an instant grace, both of which are relevant. I'm not going to recommend you necessarily go listen to either one. We did the Establishment Strikes Back. It was the very next episode, 43, which was the Steve Stockman story. We had Steve Stockman on. We had a lot of trouble with that interview, which even Steve himself admitted. We had audio and technical difficulties with it that made it very hard. And then on top of it, he was so suspicious. He'd had so many bad media experiences that he resisted letting me help him make his case. Like I was asking him some good questions, some of them tough, but they were designed so that he could exonerate himself. I knew that they were all things that he could smack out of the yard, and he kind of missed it. He ultimately, to his credit, calls and apologizes to me. So I don't know that we actually achieved what we were setting out to do there. We also did another episode called Campaign Finance Laws Solve No Problem. This was actually an Instant Grace 25, and it was about Mayor Eric Adams, where they were using campaign finance laws against him. The issue there is something they called straw man contributions. And in both of these cases, I explained the second purpose of campaign finance laws. And you say, wait a minute, Jim, I didn't catch the first. Here it is. Campaign finance laws are written by incumbents. They are written by incumbents. And they exist to stop challengers from being able to get elected. That's what they exist for. So if you are an incumbent and you say, oh, I'm going to be running for re-election, the people that are on the committee that have regulation or issues before your particular committee flood you with donations. They show up out of the woodwork. Oh, then they write checks and they put a little source code in the corner so you know where those checks came from and why you got them. Okay. But they make sure, I told you the donor class donates differently. This is how they donate differently. They're making sure that they have access to the congressman, that their phone calls are going to get returned, that their lobbyists will be able to get meetings. And that's how the system works. Okay. The same challenger in a race has no power or influence to sell yet. And until he can convince everybody that he might win, which is a bit late in the game, until he convinces everybody that he's got a real chance of winning, it's like filling a swimming pool with a teaspoon. Every single donation is a grind, and it really does, to a large degree, require people who agree with you. So that's the name. That's claim one, and that is the main purpose. That's the 80% purpose of campaign finance laws. But you know what? Sometimes people, some pains in the rear ends managed to get elected. Some challengers who weren't really supposed to get all the way through managed to squeeze through one of these 435 households, and they get into Congress. And man, they tick us off, and we got to do something to do two things. We got to make sure that they can't continue to be in Congress. We got to figure out a way to get them out. And campaign finance laws now become a legal tool that we can use against them, or we need to punish them broadly and in open. We need to take them out to the middle of the prison yard, beat them within an inch of their life, politically speaking, and send a signal to all the other people. Don't you dare start siding with this outsider, because if you do, this will happen to you. And most of the Republican Party at this juncture is either captive to the president, or they're just willing to do anything to stay in office. Okay?
Yep.
That's a large portion of the people who are left. Most of the people who would oppose the president are gone. Massie is kind of the last man in the room standing. Okay. So we talked about this. That's why we did the Stockman episode. They sent him to prison, and they did it so they can make an example out of him.
Yep.
Okay. I wanted people to know that what was happening in the Trump case, because it had a lot of overlap with what happened to Stockman, that the weaponizing of the Justice Department, of the District Attorney of New York, and all these other people that are getting involved in this thing, this was being weaponized to go after him. These campaign finance laws, they're going to keep you out of office, but if you show up, they'll sit down and put an arm and say, okay, well, you made it here, but if you play along, you'll be fine. And you say, well, no, I'm going to actually do what I campaigned on, and I'm going to stick to my principles. Well, they're prepared to take you out, and that may include wearing prison garments before they're done. That's what the campaign finance laws exist for, and it's fantastic. All you have to do is waive them. Say, oh, we've got a campaign finance violation. Oh, we got some kind of charge of corruption, and it exaggerates way beyond what the technical details of the case are. But in the public's mind, they're like, oh, well, they're all in the take anyway. Ergo, where there's heat, there's light, there's fire,
there's
something.
Smoke. So let's. I'm not going to steel man Ken Blackwell, but let's ask the question: is this post that we just went through laying the groundwork for that?
Yes, it is part of that effort, and it is specifically using in misleading language the campaign finance law to make it seem like he's really done something. Yeah. They would not have had this data to report to you if we don't have campaign finance laws. And that is the real power that they have at this juncture, is to say, oh, well, can you believe he's getting funding? Can you believe who he's getting funding from? Because the place that they're trying to hit, and this is why they chose this strategy, they're trying to hit at who donates to him.
Yep.
So the signal is, don't donate to this guy, because your name may end up in a public post. You may get doxxed.
We've seen news, I think New York Times, and I'm not a big fan or a reader, but I did see an item from them exposing the billionaire donor class, right? The billionaire political campaign. And they exposed them as
new.
No, it's not new. They're giving from both sides, or they're giving to both sides. Be nice if they give to three-way sides, gave it to a triangle instead, but, that's down the road.
So I just want people to know this is non-sensational. It's not incredibly interesting. Some of the money that's coming to him is because Trump chose to oppose him. That's why it's happening. It wouldn't be happening. No Trump opposition, the amount of money that he's raising goes way down. Yep. This is Trump's opposition that's doing this.
Yep.
So they're saying, okay, we don't have any way to hit this guy because he's so rigidly honest. He's been so thorough up to this point in staying principled that we don't have anything with which to hit him. It doesn't matter that he votes with the president 91 or 2% of the time. What matters is we have to convince everybody that he's part of the squad. And what we're going to do is we're going to target his donors so that they're more fearful about making donations to him.
Yeah, well, it just doesn't affect the donor class. The political donor class is unaffected by this. It's the rest of us that are looking at, and we either have to go, oh my gosh, or we take the approach that Jim and I have taken today, which is, hey, let's look at this thing clearly and concisely and see what's really happening here and avoid the hoopla, right?
Yes. And what I wanted you to know is that this is happening. We told you it was going to happen. And I'm going to add one more layer onto this, and that is the worst has not yet happened. There's going to be a charge against him that is much more personal, and they've already hinted at a possible angle, which is the fact that his wife died very suddenly in the summer of 2024. I saw him. I was actually in a meeting with him. I've met the congressman. I was actually in a meeting with him less than a month later. It came as a shock. He'd been married for over 30 years. He has a grown family. It was a surprise. They've not disclosed what happened or why. They've chosen to keep that private. But this year he remarried, or late last year. It was very late last year. He
Oh,
remarried.
great. I can see where this is going.
So they've already hinted that Trump has done this himself in Truth Social Post, has called her a member of the radical left. She once was a Ron Paul campaign operative, and that's how they met. She's not on the radical left. Okay. Quite the contrary.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to try to do something involving either his wife's death or the new wife he's married to, or it could be something even dirtier or more sinister than that. But it's coming. It's coming, and they're going to do something in such a way and late enough in the game that it's going to be difficult for him to deal with or respond to when they do it. And that's on purpose. That's how the end of the campaign, the October surprise situation tends to work. So the primary is on May 19, which is the last Tuesday before Memorial Day. That'll be easier for you to remember. It's the Tuesday right before Memorial Day weekend. And I believe he's going to win. I still think, despite all of this opposition, it's going to end up outfunding him by a very considerable number of millions of dollars. I still think he's going to end up winning. The people of his own district are going to send him back. I want everybody to be on the lookout, starting at the end of April, all the way through that May 19 date, for this other heavier shoe to drop. And we have mentioned several episodes in here. The Ken Blackwell Facebook post, we are going to put all those down in the show notes so people can scan them for themselves. But if I were to give you any action out of all of those links, it's to go back and watch episode 42, because I start with a principle. I act in principle fashion. So I was on the other side defending Donald Trump when this was being misused against him. And here we are, it's being used against Thomas Massie. And so even though I'm a fan of Massie, I'm not special pleading here. I'm showing you how all of this stuff actually works and what it means. And if you just watched even the first 29 minutes and you skipped all the Trump part, the first 29 minutes of Trump and the rancid truth about campaign finance laws, episode 42, then you would learn more than most reporters covering politics know about how and the campaign finance system works and why it exists.